Hey, welcome back to Critical Weight Theory. And if you've never been here before, well, welcome for the first time. This is a podcast where I talk about many different things, and that sometimes includes the music industry. So, today's question is one you've possibly noticed or maybe asked yourself, and maybe you never really thought much about it, but it's a pretty straightforward question. Why do singles and EPs almost always include remixes? Like you find a song you like, and suddenly there are five versions of it. There's like a club mix, a radio edit, a slowed version, maybe even a completely different vibe. Like it might even basically be a different track with this with the same title that's like associated with a different track altogether. But it'll act almost like it's the same song when it's kind of not. Nine Inch Nails does that sometimes. It's a thing that you find a lot in electronic music and a lot of pop songs as well. Some hip hop songs and even some regular rock songs get the treatment too. So, what's going on here? Well, let's get into that a little bit. So, first, there's the interesting question of what singles and EPs actually are. It helps to understand the format. A single is exactly what it sounds like, it's built around one main track. An EP or extended play is somewhere between a single and a full album. It usually has a handful of tracks, but it's not meant to be a big, definitive artistic statement or whatever. Now, I have heard some people define an EP as as a release that is under a half an hour, but that's not necessarily true because I've seen some EPs that are technically over a half an hour. Like if it's like 31 minutes or 32 minutes, you might say something about that, like that it's still an EP, but it's definitionally over a half hour in length. So the length of it isn't the sole determining factor. It's more about like the intent, I guess. So it's more flexible than you know uh, a lot of definitions might have you think. But artists and labels often use EPs as testing grounds, promotional tools, or just a way to stay active between larger releases. And because of that flexibility, they don't always need a full set of brand new spanking new songs. So uh, here's why remixes fit perfectly into I guess, the modern music, the modern industry. So remixes come in to augment the entire experience. A remix is not just a tiny tweak. It can completely reshape a song, change the tempo, swap the mood, add or remove elements, or even turn it into something that barely resembles the original. So I'm a bit of a rocker at heart. Not that I only listen to rock music, but I'll use an example here. There's a remix of the Filter song "Hey Man, Nice Shot" that kind of makes it weird. It's like a funk version of it or something, and it's definitely different from the original. But in its own quirky way, it's kind of a fun version of it, and that's one of the interesting things about these remixes. Sometimes they can take something that even sounded a little bit heavy or like angry, and it kind of changes the vibe a little bit. And that's true of other genres as well. So instead of one track, you suddenly have multiple versions that feel new, and that leads to the real reason remixes show up so often. They let one song do more work. So in a way, in in a sort of twisted way, it's like a way to get away with being lazy while still doing something a little bit original. So the real reasons that remixes are everywhere. Let's go through some of the big ones. First off, you got the task of reaching different audiences, which of course the music business wants to do. You You appeal to more people, you have more people possibly getting money to the record label and ostensibly to the artist, but they're like an afterthought. They're like, sure, we'll throw you some crumbs, but this CEO at the top, he's got to be able to buy his hookers and blow, man. So we gotta make sure we have all these different remixes and different artists who can just generate more wealth for the record company at the top. So a remix can push a song into a totally different space. A slow pop track might become a dance floor anthem. They might speed it up. A club song might get turned into something more radio friendly. It could be the same core song, but for different audiences. And it basically extends the life of a release as well. Without remixes, a song gets released and then it more quickly might fade. But with remixes, it might keep coming back, sort of like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. And I'm a horror fan, so that's why I use that analogy. And new versions mean the playlist placements, new DJ sets, and more chances to show up in recommendations, which is important for streaming. So it keeps the track alive longer than it would be on its own in some ways. And there's also a chance for collaboration and cross promotion, or as I might like to call it, cross pollination. A lot of remixes are officially commissioned, and that means another artist comes in and reinterprets the track. And both artists are now connected to it, and both audiences might get pulled in. Of course, that's not guaranteed to happen. Some audiences might reject the remix. If they hear it, they might be like, oh, this sucks. This is, I might like this artist, but it's definitely not their best work or something like that. The collaboration might fall flat. So it's not guaranteed to be successful. But you know what? In a lot of cases, it is successful, and it can show that the artist has range. You might be like, wow, I never thought they would collaborate with this person. It can be somebody entirely outside of the genre or something like that. And it impresses music fans to see that the artist that they like you know uh, has a wide appeal. They're collaborating with people you might not expect, and it's basically collaboration as marketing. It makes the artist look more like an artist, but it also can boost the industry too. So you got profits and some artistic cred, and it's smart if you think about it. Like that's really a pretty intelligent approach to this. And of course you can fit a track more into DJ and playlist culture if you have more variety. So different versions can serve different purposes when it comes to that. DJs might need a specific tempo or style for a set, so streaming platforms benefit from having multiple versions of the same track. And each version is another entry point, another play, another data point. So it's also low cost content, at least typically. Making a brand new song often takes time and money. And even now, a lot of music artists, they're not like me. I just do something relatively cheap, recording stuff on my laptop or whatever using my laptop mic. And of course, the big dogs, they don't want to do that. They want to have higher quality recordings. They don't want to make everything sound lo-fi or whatever, you know. So they might have to spend money and whatnot to craft an original song, because people still have studios that they go to, and those can be expensive. But a remix just reuses existing material, at least typically. I mean that is less common these days because you could have a home studio that's actually pretty decent. But traditionally, a lot of people still might want to use the pros. The people that the record companies might tie you together with. And it's a more efficient, like remixes are a more efficient way to build out a release without starting from scratch every time. And for EPs, especially, that matters. And they're often about staying visible and making a huge statement, or, something like that. Uh, and it's a way to have experimentation without risk. Remixes give artists room to try new things. They can explore new sounds or styles using a familiar bass. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, it's still tied to a song people already know, and you can still have some moderate success anyway. There's some lower risk and a little bit more freedom, and you're still allowed sometimes to make a big statement. Like there might be the idea in some people's heads that singles are guaranteed to just be, I don't know, like carbon copies of the original, and like the original is going to always be better. But that's not necessarily true. Like sometimes you can have a remix that actually outshines the original. Just like with a movie or a cover song, sometimes the new version is superior to the original. It happens. So it's not always the case that a remix is going to be outshined by the original version. And there's a cultural side to this too, in genres like electronic, hip hop, and pop, remixing isn't just a bonus feature, it's actually become a key part of the ecosystem. So some artists build huge parts of their catalog around these remixes. So in a way, music today isn't always a finished product, it's something that keeps evolving. So when you see a single or EP packed with remixes, it's not random, it's strategic. And remixes help a song reach more people, stay relevant longer, and generate more engagement, all without starting from zero. So you have one track and multiple lives. So that's the basic reason why this strategy is applied. I think it is intelligent, although, sometimes it can be a bit much if you hear like 50 versions of the same song or whatever. And then there's the aspect that, probably gets a little bit lost in this discussion, which is mashups that other people do, like on YouTube or whatever. That's technically, I think, usually not uh, an official remix. I don't think those are usually sanctioned by people. But mashups are kind of in a similar vein in a way, I would say. And of course, you've got other marketing strategies out there, but I feel like I've talked about this pretty well here. And if you like the episode, feel free to click the like button or subscribe button. Well, it's not like it's an either or thing. You can do both of those things. And feel free to leave a comment. What are your thoughts on this topic? Are you annoyed by remixes? Do you know any remixes that totally obliterate the original? It happens. It happens. And, are you a musician? Do you do this strategy? That kind of thing. So, all right. That's about it for the episode. Have a good day.